host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching from. As you guys well know, I typically, or say, so I'll introduce them in a moment. We typically do this week in pop culture, going over the goings on in pop culture over the course of the past week. And of course, a lot's been going on this week. We had Baltimore Comic Con, which you see in the title, happening this weekend, so wasn't able to do it on our typical day of Saturday. So welcome if you are joining us. And I think we lost Spillman there for a second. So let me see
Can
if
you
we
see
have
me?
him here.
Can
No,
you
we
see me?
can't. Let's see. Let's see if I can get him on here because we don't see you. I'll give him a moment to hop back on. Here we go. All right, Spillman, are you there? There we go. Okay,
Can
so
you see
now I
me
see
now?
you.
Sorry
Yes,
about
now we
that,
can see you.
guys.
So, as always, want to welcome my fellow co-host, Mr. Spillman Trueheart, aka Spills. What's going on, man?
I'm on YouTube, so I can't do my effects this week, ladies and gentlemen. You're happy that I'm not able to do those corny effects that Brandon wishes he could on his computer device. You know, we've got some big stories. They've come out with some things about the new live action One Piece that I'm interested in, and I'll talk about it more during my part. But we got some other topics we're going to talk about. We're happy to talk about them.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be pretty short and sweet today. We only have a couple of things that we wanted to talk about. So shouldn't be. It's actually going to be shorter than what you normally have with our show. I know our show normally runs an hour, but it'll probably be a little shorter this go around. The first one that I want to talk about, of course, is the Penguin. The episode that just aired this past over this course of this week. And if you're not privy to the Penguin or that series, if you're not aware of it, is basically a continuation of the story that was established in the Batman and Matt Reeves the Batman, and the ramifications, if you will, of what transpired at the end of that film. And it's hard to kind of dive into the first episode without really going into spoilers. So, I'll warn you now, I'm about to get into some spoilers of the Batman. So by the end of that film, uh the Scarecrow, what am I saying? Not the Scarecrow, the Riddler. I'm thinking of, you know, I'm thinking of Nolan's Batman Begins, but I'm sorry. Matt Reeves, the Batman, with the Riddler, he ended up flooding Gotham City, and there's a lot of, and he also caused the death of one of its major figures in with gangster underworld. So you have the ramifications of the damage that was done from that flood, but you also have the power vacuum, if you will, that now exists within the criminal underworld that our title character, the Penguin, of course, uh, wants to be able to take over. So, Spillman, I know you had a chance to see episode one of this season. What were your initial impressions?
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that.
You did.
Yeah, so I was really interested in the first episode. It was very similar to other. It was very similar to other like crime shows and other things that you see. I think that they did a good job establishing um, Colin Farrell's Penguin as a puppet master esque controller of situations. He doesn't really use brute force or sheer just muscle to control people. He also uses different means to control people versus each other. And I think that was very refreshing. Um, Penguin's not known for being a beat 'em up kind of gangster. He's I'll outsmart you and have everything in line. So I was very interested in it. I think this is the most we've had a look at Colin Farrell in this makeup because in the Batman movie, obviously, he was only in a few scenes. So you really didn't get to look at it. I think I like it in the makeup. How do you feel about the makeup?
So I'll just go over, just overall thoughts, and the makeup will play into, those
Hmm.
thoughts. Is I'll be honest, going into uh this series, I was a little skeptical because a lot of times when you have a little bit of something, it works a lot better than when you really have to focus on that specific thing. Like sometimes too much of something may work against something that works better when it's only a small sample size of it. Now, granted, with that being said, in talking about rewinding it and talking about the Batman, Colin Farrell absolutely, disappears into that role. I remember when, it was I remembered when Matt Reeves was, casting that film that Colin Farrell had been cast. But by the time we got to the point, because you have to remember this was what during the almost during the pandemic when they were doing a lot of the promotional material that I had forgotten that he was playing that role when we were starting to see trailers and things like that. And I was like, oh right, that is Colin Farrell. So, kudos to him that he was able to, disappear into that role. Cause so oftentimes, even with our best actors, a lot of times we're still seeing that person and it's kind of really hard to separate that person because their face, is everywhere. People recognize who they are.
Hmm.
Um, Being able to separate the actor from the character. Now, with that said, I was also hesitant in with the series also because we've had, prior attempts with doing shows where we're doing prequels or doing something that is ancillary or in the world of another character that we know. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I mean, we've addressed it even with the character of Batman. And don't get me wrong, as much as I love Gotham, I feel like many of us can agree that um, that this should have been what the focus was, where we were specifically focusing on the underground aspect. And this is no slight against um, against our actor who plays the young Bruce Wayne, but if we're going to have Batman in the series, we need to have Batman in the series. And I feel like, unfortunately, by having a younger version of Bruce Wayne, that kind of distracted from the focus being on the criminal underworld. So with what they, were able to accomplish with this show, I was really impressed that, yeah, we do get some call outs or some mentions of things that have happened in the movie, but it still is able to stand on its own as a story without really. And I mean, granted, as I said, it really does help to have seen the first film because that kind of immediately places you into the story of this first episode, and it may be a little tricky to grasp maybe a couple of things here and there. Uh, like deep cut things that you may not, grasp unless you have seen that film. But I feel like there's enough there where you can still enjoy the story on its own because at the end of the day, we understand that story of, the kind of like the Scarface type of story that we've seen where you have a character who is, a grunt, if you will, or, even if they're not a grunt, they're not at the top of the food chain when it comes to the criminal underworld. And then trying to journey with them in doing all the different conniving,
Hmm.
manipulative things to be able to get to that point. And you kind of in a weird way rooting for them because you have an idea of what they're aspiring to get to, but that there's going to be things that they're going to have to do in order to get there.
Hmm.
Um, Now, in talking about the makeup and things like that, it was already impressive in the film. But again, in talking about a series where now we're going to specifically focus on that, that was my only concern. But, in watching the episode, it was still just as impressive as it was in the film. And I'll even say that they take it a step further because there is one scene, and I guess this is a mild spoiler, in which one of the villains, tries to humiliate the penguin by like completely stripping him of his clothes. And
Hmm.
so you have to believably consider this person to have that body type and the fact that the bodysuit that he has, it looks believable. It doesn't look fake. Like it looks like that is the actual build of that character of that person. So, kudos to them with the makeups that they use. And, I'm excited, for what's to come based on what has already been shown in episode one.
I agree with that, and I think also, because of the acting chops of Colin Farrell, they are able to throw things off of him that seem much more Machiavellian for this kind of a character, rather than just your general average. I'm a mob grunt who's a grunt. Um, so I'm interested to see what that does. Again, I think that they're going to try to take a lot of the same kind of um, thematic cues from shows like The Wire and other street level crime dramas that are all the rage in a lot that hasn't really been explored in comic mediums as much as we would think. Like I could think maybe the Netflix series, and even those Netflix series were not as big on the crime level stuff. Like maybe Daredevil, the Daredevil show was, but like Heroes for Hire or Luke Cage and stuff. Really, what it was kind of about the street level stuff, which it was. They had Cottonmouth on Luke Cage, but it's just good to see that they're doing stuff a little differently and leaning into that level of detail for this kind of a drama.
Gotcha. For sure. For sure. So the next part that we wanted to, talk about with this episode of This Week in Pop Culture is Baltimore Comic Con. Of course, that's where I am. I'm at the convention center. And wanted to give you guys a glimpse of some of the things. As I said, I'm at the convention center now, but we're going to do a brief tour, if you will. You can see that there that we have, the sign, just as they would have if say if you were going to, San Diego Comic Con, they also put the signage up there. But you want to come hither and journey with me on this tour. Um, I don't know if we have any folks that have been to Baltimore Comic Con. You can, drop it off there in the comments for me. But if we're, talking about Baltimore Comic Con, I've been going to the show long enough to, see it in many of its iterations where we had the focus on comic books for a period of time. And then I want to say in the few years prior to, I guess we can say the pandemic, there was a slight period there where there were a far more media guests than they, had ever had in the earlier years of its show. And now after the pandemic, there has been, I guess you can say, a rebranding, if you will, where now while there are a couple of media guests here and there, the focus has returned back to the comics. So with many of the guests that you have, there
What's
is
up,
a
Ray?
there is a higher focus there. Um, so right now, I'm making my way uh, down the lobby. And if you know the convention center, they have the lower level where we actually get to the exhibit hall. So I want to give you guys a peek into that because um, for those that are not at this year's show, one thing that has been fascinating this year is to see how things have changed in terms of in terms of the setup of where things are. So, like in prior years, and we're talking about Baltimore Comic Con, there has normally been a designated place where we have seen the guests, the media guests, and then a specified place. Yeah, you're hearing a lot of background noise, but specified place. Oh my gosh, you guys have to see this cosplay. This is awesome.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Awesome Transformer cosplay. But I want to be able to keep going, so I'm not going to pause for them. But yeah, here's the exhibit hall floor, and I wanted to be able to give you a glimpse into that because typically, when we're talking about our the floor here, there is a normal like place that's normally like I guess you could say towards the food court where they normally hold many of the guests. And for whatever reason, I mean, I don't, maybe you guys can let me know there in the comments why that is. But they actually have the video game section over there now currently versus having our media guests. So that's been something that has been interesting because for so long that has always been the place. So let me switch the camera one more time. So
That's the Ecto 1, ladies and gentlemen.
if you see here, this is normally where this is the video game area that you're seeing. Well,
Oh.
this is the video game area that you're seeing in front of you, and this is normally where they have like just a lineup of where all the media guests are. So, clearly they've decided for whatever reason. I don't have any info as to why that is, because I've gotten so accustomed. So it was a little jarring at first of seeing the media guests there, or not, I should say, not seeing the media guests there. And now you have the media guests that are literally towards the end of the hall. So, you're making your way down this entire hall, and at the very end, you have, your media guests. My only, and I have no proof of this again, my only theory, excuse me, my only theory as to why that is maybe by having all of our guests here towards the back, that it'll encourage folks to see more of the floor versus just camping out in one section of the floor. By not having it where you just saw, um in the corner, like into the light, to the left, and kind of in the corner of the space once you enter into the exhibit halls, this exhibit hall space, that it
Uh-huh.
encourages you to look and walk more of the floor before you get to the media guests, if that's where
Well,
you're
that
trying
makes
to go.
sense. That makes sense.
Like that would be my only, like I said, my only theory. I have no proof of that. If you guys have some ideas or have, a clear cut reason as to why, you can let us know in the comments. If maybe perhaps you know better than me as to why that is. But it was just something where it was like, oh, okay, that's different. It's a little jarring, but I was like, okay, that's different. I'm so used to having it there, and yet we have it, all the way towards the end. Now, let me know, Spillman. I don't believe you have had a chance to go to Baltimore Comic Con. Am I right about that?
I've never been to Baltimore Comic Con, but what would you say was your favorite panel so far? Did you sit on any panels this go round, or
Say it one more time.
what was your favorite panel so far on the Comic Con? This
Um,
Baltimore Comic Con.
well, it's funny, I know I'll sound very, very biased. I
Right,
mean,
right.
I didn't mention this before. I did moderate a couple of panels, but I
Okay,
actually, I would have actually gone to those panels even if I wasn't moderating them. So,
okay.
you had the aliens united panel. So you had Mark Rolston, you had Gene Goldstein, and you had Daniel Cash. If you guys don't know those names of our Marines, that is, let's see, Spunkmeyer, um, Drake, and Vasquez of the Marines. So our two folks that are holding the big, those big guns that they have on their shoulders, as well as one of our folks that are using one of the vehicles. Let me switch it over so that way you can see it now. So this is a look at. So we also have Flash Gordon here this year. But yeah, those are our. That's Jeanette Goldstein, Daniel Cash, and Mark Rolston over there. But yes, it is literally at the end of the convention center. So, did you have any questions like Spellman other than what we have with the programming? So, as I said, you had that, and the only other panel that I did was the what was it? Representation in comics, which was cool to have if you know their work. Sanford Green, Gene Ha, and Stephanie Williams, which was very enlightening in them talking about their respective careers, how they got involved in comics, and some of the things that they came across, whether it was personally that they came across, or even their colleagues came across when it came to, or say when it comes to representation and the importance of it. So it was a very enlightening panel.
Okay. Finally, you're in
Yeah.
Baltimore. They're known for their delicious crab cakes. Does the convention center have a crab cake that they put out in these kind of situations, or
Um, I
did they
can.
have
I,
anything?
I normally, I'll be honest, I normally don't get partake in the food that is available at the convention center, so I
Uh huh.
can't speak to that. But whenever I'm in Baltimore, I always have to have my crab cake. So
You
like you can't
gotta
go
do.
wrong.
You gotta do it.
And
So so.
there are a couple of hole in the wall places that that I'm familiar with, that they
Uh
have
huh.
incredible crab cakes.
Okay. Okay. That works. I feel like this time next year, I think, for continuity and making sure that we have a good show, I'm gonna make sure that we do, the Baltimore one together next year.
For
Um,
sure. For
but that means that we're gonna have to get you in cosplay, Brandon, because I'm not gonna keep showing up to these things if you don't come
I don't want to
shoot,
hear it,
spook,
man. I
shoot
ain't
it,
doing
and
no
boot it.
cosplay until we
You
get you down
already
at the
said.
show.
You already
If,
said.
if
I
we
went to
can get you
Awesome
down at the
Con.
show,
I went to
then
Awesome
then
Con,
I'll look
ladies and
into the
gentlemen.
cosplay
I
piece.
went to the Awesome Con. We're gonna have a poll over the time once we get to another one where we can pick what Brandon will wear. We're gonna make sure that it's nothing too crazy. We're not gonna make you, be Pikachu or anything. That would be funny. You could be Pikachu, I could be Ash, and I could make you go, Brandon, and then you'll be that'll be amazing. People will love
Fair enough. Fair enough.
that. You'll still
So
be the star of the show, though, if you're Pikachu. You'll still be the
man,
star.
man,
I will
man,
just
we
have to
both stars
carry
of the
you
show.
everywhere, as I
We
do
both
with the
stars
show.
of the
I
show.
carry you with the show. That's what I do. I carry you. So that'll work.
But okay, all right. So that's gonna wrap up what we have been talking about Baltimore Comic Con. Um, the final piece of it, and you guys saw it in the I guess in the title, is talking about Adrian Wojnarowski, otherwise known as Woj,
The Woj
retiring from
bombs.
ESPN
Egon and Ray.
and
Yeah, there you go.
becoming, what is it, the
Head
in charge,
basketball.
the GM
Yeah.
of his alma mater, St. Bonaventure, and taking over there. So you know, initial impressions, Spillman. What are your thoughts on Woj retiring?
I feel like this is a huge retirement. Woj was definitely someone who shaped how we report sports stories in the medium of social media and the internet space. Before, they were just press releases that would be released. Woj realized the gold and the drivability of taking something as clear to a website like Twitter, like NBA Twitter, and taking it to the next level with the Woj bomb. There's not anything very similar in other sports, maybe Matt Schefter or something, but that's generally at the what you call it level, at the draft level. It's generally because most sports don't have transactions like the NBA does. So it's just, a great career. Crazy to see him walk away from $7 million a year. Would you do that? I'm not sure you could. I know I
I don't know
couldn't.
if I would, but
Yeah.
there are a couple of things that go into that. He's not a young guy anymore.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like there are a lot of factors that are playing into it. You have someone who is, at a point in their career where it honestly, if they made more money, is it really going to like make or break them? Not
Yeah.
really. He's made all the money that he's needed to make. So like, and he's accomplished so much, in terms of what he has done as, an NBA insider, that I'm like, what else is it for him to do? He's broke so many stories, he's provided so many, memorable moments when it comes to, providing that inside information about the NBA and the goings on in the NBA. So, it's understandable that, he's trying to, give back. and go back to his roots with, as I said, his alma mater with St. Bonaventure. But there are also other implications as well, that I feel like a lot of people aren't really talking about. We're now at a point when we're talking about, journalism in sports, where there was a time where we had kind of those like lone wolves, kind of like what Woj has been, that have been able to provide inside information and have been those sources of information. But these days, now you have communities of a lot of these journalists that are doing the same thing, and so there isn't as much of a need for to have those types of lone wolves anymore that you used to have back in the day, that these days you're not seeing as much of. So
Hmm.
you have that change in how journalism is happening, and then of course you also have the folks um, that are not even working for a lot of those major corporations. If we're talking about ESPN, that they're breaking stories, from their podcasts, from what
Yeah.
they're doing online in their with their independent ventures versus what we're seeing, with these big major, corporations. So I would say it's a change in terms of what we're seeing in journalism when it comes to sports, but it also has implications with existing members that are at ESPN.
Yeah.
Now, now that you have, Woj leaving, now what is it, Weinhorst,
Champs. Champs.
Brian
Oh yeah, Windhurst. Brian Windhurst.
Windhorst, Bryn
I feel
Windhorst,
like
with Brian
Windhorst
Windhorst.
is a. I feel like he's a one player pony. He's a LeBron guy, and I feel like
Still though, like I
once
still feel
LeBron
like
goes,
that
he won't be as
provides.
big.
But I'm saying I still feel that provides Brian an opportunity to kind of step in there and be that person who's providing that insider information. And then on a financial level, this gives more license for Stephen A. to be able to get the money that he's going after. Because
Yeah.
it's still, if memory serves, it still hasn't happened yet, and he's still holding out for that big contract extension. And now that they don't have, Woj, that gives them some leverage to be able to hop in there and say, hey, like, you don't have Woj anymore. I'm still one of the primary faces of your company. Now more than ever, you need to be pay me, what I'm asking for.
I
So
wonder about that, Ray. I wonder why would they do that, Ray? Why would they do that? I wonder what that means. Why would they do that, Ray? I agree, but
so
what was your favorite Woj bomb? I think my favorite Woj bomb. I'll let you answer because I feel like the biggest Woj bomb was for your team. What was your
yeah,
favorite Woj bomb?
yeah. No, agree. I mean, there've been so many, it's really hard to pinpoint any. So
Not even Durant to the Warriors? You won't say Durant to the Warriors? Right, thank you,
yeah,
Ray. We see who this guy is. We know it was Durant to the Warriors.
for sure, for sure. But what about you guys out there? What has been your favorite, Woj moment of a story that he broke? And what are your impressions about him leaving ESPN? You can let us know in the comments. But that's going to wrap up this edition. As I told you, it's going to be short. This edition of This Week in Pop Culture. You can find me, Brandon Choi, at Brandon Choi underscore ENT at Instagram, and then Brandon Choi underscore ENT. Brandon Choi underscore ENT on Instagram, and Brandon Choi ENT on X. Spillman, take it away. Where can they
All
find you?
right, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me at Truly Spill. We're going to be tuning into that next season of One Piece on Netflix. That's coming out soon. They announced a lot of new characters that they cast. We'll enjoy the rest of it. But again, it's football season. Don't root for anybody that goes against the Saints. From what I'm seeing, those guys are gangbusters. It might be their year. Who that?
Indeed. Indeed. All right, so that's gonna do it for us here this week in pop culture.
It won't
Next
work because
week
this is a
we'll
Google
probably be
product,
doing
ladies
a
and
similar
gentlemen.
show because I will be away in Marlborough, Massachusetts, doing another show.
That's right.
But
It's going to get a
uh,
chowder.
what can I say? But we will try to make it a point to do another show, more than likely on Sunday. So till then, catch y'all next time.
Peace, guys.
Peace.
Peace, 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 peace.